Culture is often misunderstood. It's treated like the nice-to-have part of business, something that comes after strategy, after operations, after hitting revenue goals. But the truth is, culture is the strategy. It's the foundation of every result your business achieves or fails to achieve. When you build your culture intentionally, it becomes the engine that drives your entire organization forward. When you neglect it, you may still grow, but it'll be messy, chaotic, and unstable. Here's what most leaders miss. Culture isn't created by chance. It doesn't evolve naturally into greatness. Left alone, culture becomes reactive, not intentional. It turns into a collection of random behaviors, inconsistent standards, and unspoken rules that may or may not serve your mission. If you don't actively define it, communicate it, and reinforce it, then you're letting your team and their habits shape your organization, and guess what? That rarely ends well. When people say culture, they often think of perks, casual Fridays, snacks in the kitchen, team building retreats. That's not culture, those are activities. Real culture is how your team behaves every single day. It's how they make decisions. It's how they treat each other. It's how they respond under pressure. It's what they do when the deadline moves up or the client is frustrated. Culture is who your team is when no one is watching. And if you're the leader, culture starts with you. You set the tone, not just with what you say, but with what you do. Your team is always watching. They're watching what you praise, they're watching what you ignore, they're watching who gets rewarded and who gets away with bad behavior. If you say accountability matters, but you let top performers slide when they break rules, then your culture doesn't stand for accountability. It stands for results at any cost. If you say collaboration matters, but your managers hoard information and act territorial, then collaboration isn't your culture, control is. Culture becomes real when it's lived. And it becomes strong when it's consistent, but consistency only comes with clarity. You can't expect your team to behave a certain way if you haven't clearly defined what those behaviors look like. Be respectful, take ownership, communicate well. Those are vague values. What does that mean here? What does respect look like on your team? What does ownership look like in your business? You have to translate values into behaviors. Then you have to coach to those behaviors. You have to measure them, reward them, and correct them when they are missing. Now let's talk about performance. Some leaders think culture is separate from results. It's not. Culture drives results. A team with the right culture doesn't just feel good. They execute. They move fast. They don't need to be micromanaged. Why? Because they understand the mission. They know the standards and they're emotionally bought in. They don't just show up for a paycheck. They show up with purpose. And when that happens, performance becomes sustainable, people stay longer, burnout decreases, innovation increases. That's what a real culture does. It multiplies everything, but this only happens if you protect it. Culture is fragile. One wrong hire, one toxic leader, one policy that contradicts your values, it can all unravel fast. That's why great leaders guard the culture. They don't tolerate behavior that's out of alignment. They don't sacrifice long-term health for short-term wins. They make hard decisions to preserve what they've built because they know culture is a living system. It needs to be nurtured, monitored, and led. If you're serious about building something that lasts, start here. Start with the culture. Stop treating it like an afterthought and make it the first conversation, not the last, because your systems, your strategy, your team, they all sit on top of the culture. And if that foundation is shaky, no amount of talent or tactics will fix it. So ask yourself, what culture are you creating today? What message are you sending with what you allow, reward, and repeat? Your culture is not accidental. It's built moment by moment, decision by decision. Build it on purpose, because when you do, you'll have something no one can copy, and that's your real advantage. If you want to know what the culture of an organization looks like, don't look at the mission statement. Don't look at the employee handbook or the value posters on the wall. Look at the behavior of the leadership. Culture doesn't start with words. It starts with actions, and those actions, whether consistent or inconsistent, whether intentional or reactive, are shaped by the people in charge. The leader sets the tone. Always, whether they realize it or not, leadership is not just about making decisions or solving problems. It's about modeling the behavior you expect from others. The way you show up, how you speak, how you handle conflict, how you give feedback, how you deal with failure, that becomes the blueprint your team follows. Whether you're aware of it or not, you are setting the cultural temperature every single day. Your team takes cues from you, and they replicate what they see. If you're constantly preaching accountability, but fail to follow through on your own deadlines, your team will notice. If you say collaboration matters, but you operate in silos and don't loop in key stakeholders, they'll do the same. If you tolerate a high performer with a bad attitude because they get results, you've just told your team that behavior matters less than outcomes. And before you know it, the standards start slipping, not because people are bad or lazy, but because they're taking direction from the culture you've allowed. One of the hardest things for leaders to accept is that they are always on. Every meeting, every conversation, every decision is an opportunity to either reinforce the culture or weaken it. The language you use matters, the level of urgency you carry matters, the way you respond to stress or conflict or success, it all matters. Because your team doesn't just listen to what you say, they watch what you do, and if there's a gap between the two, the actions will always win. Leadership also requires consistency. You can't enforce standards one day and ignore them the next. You can't have favorites. You can't be vague. Great culture doesn't come from being nice. It comes from being clear. When you're clear about what you expect and you follow through on those expectations, you create trust. And trust is the currency of culture. Without it, your team won't buy in. They'll perform just enough to stay out of trouble, but they won't be invested. They won't take ownership, and they won't stick around. People want to follow leaders who walk their talk. They want to work in environments where they know what's expected and can trust that everyone is held to the same standard. That starts with you. If your culture is full of excuses, low accountability, or hidden resentment, don't point fingers. Ask yourself, what have I allowed? What have I ignored? What have I modeled? It's not enough to hope people get it. You have to communicate it constantly. Culture needs to be repeated, reinforced, and rewarded. You don't build it once and leave it alone. You talk about it in meetings. You coach to it in once. You hire and fire based on it. You use it to make decisions, because culture isn't just what you say, it's what you do when it's hard. It's what you do when you have to choose between a quick win and a long-term value. It's what you do when no one is watching. Leadership is a mirror. If your team isn't performing the way you want, look at the reflection. If the energy is low, the ownership is weak, or the communication is off, ask yourself how you're showing up. Are you clear? Are you consistent? Are you reinforcing the behaviors you want to see? Because the moment you stop leading culture, someone else will. And they may not take it in the direction you want. Culture doesn't drift upward, it drifts downward fast, unless someone is pulling it up on purpose, and that someone is you. As the leader, you don't just set goals. You set the emotional tone, the behavioral norms, and the standards of excellence. If you raise the bar and live by it, your team will rise with you. But if you let it drop, they will too. Leadership is not just about leading projects. It's about leading people, and people are shaped by culture. So take it seriously, because if you don't lead it, no one will. When you're building a high-performance team, it's tempting to focus on skills first. After all, you want the most talented, experienced people in every role, right? But here's the hard truth. Talent without alignment is a liability. Skill without shared values will eventually damage your culture. If you want a team that grows together, executes at a high level, and drives results long term, you must hire and fire based on culture first, not just capability. The biggest mistake leaders make is thinking culture fit means hiring people who are just like them. That's not what this is about. Culture fit isn't sameness, it's alignment. It's shared belief in how we show up, how we work, how we treat each other, and what we value as an organization. You want diverse thinking, backgrounds, and perspectives, but with common ground in terms of how we operate. That shared operational DNA is what makes a team cohesive. Every new hire either strengthens your culture or weakens it. There is no neutral. When you bring someone in who doesn't align with your core behaviors, even if they're brilliant, you're introducing friction, tension, and inconsistency. One toxic personality can unravel the trust and momentum of your entire team. It's not worth it, and yet, so many leaders compromise because someone has the resume or can produce results. What they don't see is the long-term cost of that compromise, the drama, the disengagement, the turnover, and the erosion of standards. That's why culture-driven leaders get crystal clear about what behaviors matter most. They define their values not as vague concepts like integrity or respect, but as specific actions. For example, we take full ownership for outcomes, or we speak directly, not behind people's backs. Then they build hiring processes around these values. They interview for them, they ask questions that reveal behavior, they check references for alignment, not just performance, because they know skills can be taught, values cannot. You can train someone to run a system. You can't train someone to have a great attitude. You can mentor someone on strategic thinking. You can't mentor someone into being honest. That's why the best leaders are willing to pass on a highly skilled candidate if they show signs of entitlement, blame, lack of coachability, or misalignment with the team's rhythm. Those things don't fix themselves. And if you ignore the red flags in the interview, you'll be cleaning up the mess for months, sometimes years. The same principle applies to firing. Firing someone who performs well on paper but violates your culture is hard. But not firing them is worse. Every time you keep someone on the team who contradicts your values, you send a message to everyone else. We don't actually mean what we say. Morale drops, trust erodes. Your best people start to question whether they belong, and eventually they leave, while the problem person stays. Great leaders make courageous decisions. They protect the culture at all costs. They don't let fear of short-term gaps prevent them from making long-term moves. If someone consistently undermines your standards, even if they hit their numbers, they are the wrong fit, because culture isn't about what people do, it's about how they do it. The how matters. The how is what creates trust, consistency, and sustainability. When you hire and fire based on culture, you build a team that runs without friction. You build a team that doesn't need to be constantly managed because they're aligned, they're rowing in the same direction. They believe in the mission and they share the same standards, and that's the team that scales. So ask yourself, are your hiring practices set up to evaluate cultural alignment? Are your interview questions surfacing how someone handles feedback, pressure, and collaboration? Are you rewarding the right behaviors, not just the right outcomes? Are you making tough calls to protect what matters most? Your culture is shaped by the people you let in and the ones you let stay. Every hiring decision is a vote for the future of your organization. Make those votes count. Skills are important, but culture is everything. Without it, even the most talented team will fall apart. With it, even a team that's still learning will rise. Choose alignment. Choose values, choose culture, every single time. Confusion is the enemy of culture. When people don't know what's expected of them, when the standards are inconsistent, when communication is vague, they default to whatever feels comfortable. And that comfort rarely matches high performance. It matches safety, hesitation, and low accountability. That's why if you want to build a strong, high-performing culture, it starts with one thing: clarity. Clarity isn't just about job descriptions or org charts. It's about behavior, it's about outcomes, it's about how we show up every day as a team. Your team can't live your values if they don't know what they look like in action. They can't meet expectations if those expectations haven't been clearly communicated. Leaders often assume people should know better, but your job as a leader is not to hope they figure it out. It's to make sure they can't miss it. Think about it like this when your team walks into work. whether in person or virtually. They should know what winning looks like. They should understand their goals, how those goals connect to the bigger mission, and how success is measured. They should know what behaviors are rewarded and which ones won't be tolerated. That level of clarity doesn't happen by accident. It's built through communication, repetition, and reinforcement. Leaders sometimes confuse clarity with micromanagement. But they are not the same. Micromanagement is about control. Clarity is about alignment. Micromanagement tells people how to do everything. Clarity tells them what success looks like and trusts them to get there. When you give your team a clear direction and the tools to deliver, you create freedom. You eliminate guesswork, and people perform better because they're not wasting energy wondering if they're on the right track. Culture thrives in environments where people know what to expect. Think of your values. Words like ownership, excellence, or collaboration sound great, but what do they actually mean inside your company? What does ownership look like in a missed deadline? What does collaboration look like in a high-stakes meeting? If you don't define those behaviors, everyone will apply their own definition. That's how misalignment happens. That's how you end up with culture pockets. Little groups operating by different rules, pulling in different directions. When you build clarity into your systems, you reinforce your culture in every interaction. Job scorecards, performance reviews, onboarding processes, these aren't just tools, they're cultural reinforcers. A job description that clearly outlines the results expected in a role isn't just helpful, it's a culture signal. It says, "We value outcomes." A weekly team meeting that starts with a reminder of your values isn't filler, it's alignment in action. The leader who gives direct, kind feedback in real time isn't just managing performance, they're modeling what your culture looks like under pressure. Without clarity, people make up their own rules. They start doing what's easiest, not what's best. They take shortcuts, avoid conflict, and start interpreting leadership silence as approval. That's how standards slip. That's how just this once becomes the norm. That's how you lose control of your culture. Not because your team doesn't care, but because they're unclear on what matters most. And here's the thing, most people want to do great work. They want to contribute, they want to feel successful, but they can't do that in a fog. They need to know where they're going and how to win. That's the leader's job. If your team is confused, overwhelmed, or inconsistent, the solution isn't more pressure, it's more clarity. Clarity requires courage. You have to be willing to define things others avoid. You have to name the standard, even if it makes some people uncomfortable. You have to communicate things multiple times, even if it feels repetitive. Great leaders don't assume once is enough. They repeat themselves because they know people are distracted, overwhelmed, and moving fast. Repetition builds rhythm, rhythm builds consistency, and consistency builds culture. If you want a strong culture, you have to lead with clarity, not just once during onboarding, not just in an annual review, every day, in the way you speak, in the goals you set, in the behaviors you model and the decisions you make. When your team has clarity, they move faster, they work better together, they solve problems without drama, and they hold themselves and each other to the standard. So if you're struggling with culture, start here. Are you being clear? Are your expectations explicit? Are your values translated into action? If not, don't wait for someone to figure it out. Lead it, say it, write it, show it, over and over again, because clarity isn't a one-time announcement. It's a leadership habit, and it's the habit that makes culture real. In a world where products can be copied, technology is constantly evolving, and strategies are often recycled, there's one thing that can't be duplicated: your culture. It's not on your website, it's not in your branding, it lives in the everyday behaviors of your team, the way they think, act, and solve problems. That's why culture is more than just a nice to have, it's your competitive multiplier. It's the force that turns ordinary efforts into extraordinary results. Most leaders focus on systems, strategies, and tools, and those things matter, but culture is what makes them work or not work. You can have the best CRM in the industry, the most well-written playbook, or a cutting, edge marketing funnel. But if your team doesn't trust each other, if communication is broken, or if people aren't aligned with the mission, none of those tools will get used effectively. Culture amplifies everything, or it weakens everything. That's why companies with strong cultures move faster. They don't waste time in drama, politics, or confusion. They execute, they problem solve together. They take ownership, and they bring energy and urgency to the table. When culture is strong, decisions don't bottleneck at the top because people understand how to think and act within a clear set of values. There's a shared understanding of what matters and how to respond when things go wrong. That's a powerful advantage. Now, here's what most leaders miss. Culture isn't just built in the good times, it's revealed in the hard ones. When pressure hits, when a client is unhappy, when goals aren't being met, that's when you see your real culture. And if your team rallies together, stays solution focused, and holds the standard even when it's hard, that's when you know you've built something that can't be bought or imitated. Culture also plays a massive role in talent. The best people want to work in a place where they're challenged, supported, and aligned with a bigger purpose. They want clarity, they want feedback, they want growth. A healthy culture attracts that kind of talent. It becomes a magnet for top performers, and just as importantly, it repels the wrong people. When your culture is clear and consistently lived, it filters out misalignment before it becomes a problem. And let's be honest, in today's job market, retention is everything. Constantly replacing people is expensive, time-consuming, and disruptive. But when people love where they work, when they feel part of something meaningful and believe their contribution matters, they stay. They engage, they bring their best ideas forward. That's not something you can force with a paycheck or perks. That's culture. Culture is also your secret weapon in execution. In companies without a strong culture, every task takes longer. There's hesitation, second, guessing, and backtracking. In companies with a strong culture, there's momentum. People move, they trust the process, they don't need constant reminders or micromanagement. They do the right thing because it's who they are as a team. That kind of alignment creates speed, and speed is a competitive edge. But here's the most important part. Culture is built on purpose. It doesn't just show up. It's not a byproduct of hiring good people. It's a result of clear leadership, consistent reinforcement, and high standards. It takes intention. It takes repetition. It takes leaders who model what they expect. And it takes systems that reward the right behaviors and correct the wrong ones. Culture doesn't cost you. It saves you. It saves you from constant turnover. It saves you from unnecessary conflict. It saves you from wasted time, rework, and burnout. A strong culture makes everything easier because it removes friction. It makes people want to show up, contribute, and win together. So if you're looking for an edge in your market, start with your culture. It's not soft, it's not optional, it's the foundation that everything else rests on. Build it with purpose, lead it with discipline, reinforce it every single day, because when your culture is strong, you don't just compete, you dominate. You become the team everyone else wants to be, and that is a multiplier no one can replicate.